the cup and the league all to be won. Everyone knows there's a job to be done, and with a team so fine, I'm proud they're mine. We'll be singing this song. For real bars of family athletic, and now we are on song. For real bars of family athletic, and we'll go marching on.
The Dunfermline Athletic Former Players Association podcast is sponsored by Starnut Apparel. Affordable and stylish clothing born on the terraces. Just head to www.starnutapparel.co.uk.
Bars fans, welcome once again to Walking Down the Holbeath Road, the podcast brought to you by the Dunfermline Athletic Former Players Association. I'm your host Mikey Mokkiewicz, and as always in each episode, we'll bring you exclusive interviews with the legends who've helped write the story of Dunfermline Athletic. From unforgettable goals to iconic matches, from tales of triumphs to moments that define careers. We're deep diving into the rich history of DAFC, and together we'll relive the glory days of East End Park, celebrate the players, coaches and managers who've left their mark in the black and white stripes. In this latest episode, we caught up with former striker Gerry Britton, who joined the club in 1996 ahead of the club's return to the Premier Division. He would end up top scorer in his debut season with 15 goals and carved up an excellent strike partnership alongside Andy Smith. In this episode, we chat to Gerry about his career in the game, the teammates, the dressing room stories, and of course Bert, Paton and Dick Campbell. So let's go through the turnstiles, pull up a seat, and join me as we stroll through the park's history on Walking Down the Holbeath Road with Gerry Britton.
Gerry Britton's been in great form for them since his move from Dundee. He's at the far post and he puts it past Gordon Marshall. 3-1.
That was a close thing for Gerry Britton, who of course was a product of the Celtic Boys Club. He always seems keen to play well against his old heroes, and here he is giving them something to think about. The opening goal, Dunfermline 1, Celtic 0, 16 minutes gone. Britton gets goal number 14 of the season, set up by Andy Todd's header. Just a couple of minutes later, it could have been 2 for the Pars. Britton to Hamish French, and that's a real let-off. Celtic were without central defender Stubbs and Mackay. That's hardly the ideal way to play against the big men of East End Park. Not pleasant viewing for the Celtic fans. All their favourites fell further behind in the 29th minute when they failed on a number of occasions to clear their lines. Gerry Britton had time to kick the ball back to Harry Curran for the cross, or is it a shot? It doesn't matter, it's in the back of the net. 2-0 to Dunfermline. And could this be their first victory over the Parkhead men since 1989? Kerr didn't have a hope with that ball from Curran.
So welcome to the latest podcast, Gerry Britton. How are we, Gerry?
All good, Mikey, and thanks for the invite, mate. Really looking forward to getting a chat.
Nah, brilliant, mate. You're one of my childhood heroes, so it's a pleasure to chat to you again.
Brilliant, man. You just make me feel even older, Mikey. Brilliant, mate.
We'll go back to the start, Gerry. You were born 20th of October 1970. So tell us a little bit about your early days in football and your memories as a kid, really.
I grew up in the north of Glasgow, and from as early as I remember, I just wanted to play football, and that's all I did. Wherever I could, you know, in the street, in the park, at school, whatever. And I was lucky that I had a good group of friends that were like-minded. To be fair, back in the day, there was really a great deal, much else that you could do. So we just spent our time playing football. I joined my local team, West Park, and when I was about maybe 7, and I played there till I was 14, and signed for Celtic. So yeah, no, great times and great memories just of, you know, getting the ball. That's all you did from morning to night. We good people and just trying to make yourself a better player. So it was an ideal childhood, really.
Brilliant, mate. I seen the research I've been doing. You signed for Celtic on S forms in April '86.
Yeah.
You played a lot of reserve football at Celtic. You seen your goal scoring record? It's incredible.
I know, and that was back in the day. The reserves were brilliant then, because you only had like 13 players in your first team squad, and the reserve games were a Saturday afternoon, just at the same time as the first team were playing. So if Celtic were playing Dunfermline at Parkhead in the first team, the reserves were playing at East End. So it was brilliant. You had the routine, and you had, as I say, with only being 13 in the first team squad, you had good quality players then that weren't making the first team squad were playing in the reserves. So it was a really great development space. I can remember I think it was my debut for Celtic in the reserves, and it was actually a former Dunfermline player that I was playing against for Dundee United, John Clark. And Dundee United had just beat Barcelona, a few weeks before, and John had been playing, and then I'm up against him in the reserves, and so that's the sort of standard that you are coming up against, and you can only get better as a player in those situations.
100%. What's your thoughts on, obviously, current Scottish football, and the reserve league doesn't exist anymore, and that playing against the likes of a John Clark or an injured first team player, and you're just a kid, like that doesn't happen now, does it?
I know, and I've seen the sort of decline in my time over the last 20 years, and it's really disappointing. And they've tried different variations, and the B teams and under 21s and you name it. I think what players need, they need to be tested, and unfortunately, past under 18s and recent years that hasn't been the case. I think now the sort of best bet for young players is the loan route. Getting them out to a level that they're playing against guys who are playing for their bonus, who really want to win, and just getting them used to that environment, because they don't get that in the development leagues and whatever you want to call it now, which is really disappointing. And a lot of it's to do with money. I mean, even when I was involved at Thistle in the academies and the teams, development teams, and you're faced with, okay, my first team's my be all and end all. I need to keep them in the league, or we need to try and get promotion. Can you afford to then portion off some of your budget in the hope that you're going to bring through a crop of players into your first team? And the answer most of the time these days, unfortunately, is no, we can't afford it. I mean, the sort of purists would say, I remember John Lambie when I was first coaching at Thistle and John was the manager, and we're talking about youth development, which didn't exist at Thistle, and I said, come on, John, that's the way forward. And John said, right, how much does it cost you to run a youth development set-up? And at that time I said, right, it would be 25 grand. And John said, well, that's one first team player's salary. Can you guarantee that you're going to get me at least one player from that youth development group into the first team? So I see his argument, and that is unfortunately what's happening now. Teams have to rely on, they need points, for survival. They need players that consistently are going to deliver, and you don't get that when you're developing young players. If we're going to do it, then we have to be willing to accept that there's going to be peaks and troughs.
So it's that kind of short-term fix. So there's so much pressure now in football and management, especially.
I know, and the arguments I've been involved in over the years about the leagues, the size of the leagues, I'm still a great advocate that the leagues have to be bigger. You have to take away that pressure situation. I mean, the Championship is brilliant if you're a neutral, for the games, but if you're in the midst of it, like Pars and Thistle, when I was there most of the time, you're 2 games away from top 4 or relegation battle. You don't have that sort of middle ground where you'll get to a point of the season where you can say, we are going to be safe, let's give the kids a go, and do that, because that's what happened back in the 70s. players were getting opportunities, young players to play at a good level that you just don't see now, unfortunately.
No, it's a shame. It's a shame. Talking about that reserve record, you had 122 goals in 196 games. It's not bad, eh?
It's good going, but I mean, as I said, I was playing with some really, really good players alongside, and it was hard not to score goals in that side. The guys I came through with were boys like Stevie Fulton, Mark McNally, Brian O'Neill, but you had guys like, just depends, players coming back to fitness, but like guys like Charlie Nicholas, Tommy Coyne, Darius Jakirovsky was a fantastic striker, so when you're playing with these guys, you're going to learn, and as I say, it was just a brilliant development space for everybody, and I just really thrived on it.
Superb, mate. And then obviously you broke into the Celtic first team. How was that experience, and working under the likes of Billy McNeil?
I mean, it was amazing, because Billy he's such an icon. He just had this charisma. He'd walk in a room, and everybody would just shut up and listen. I made the mistake of my first day of training calling him Billy during a practice match, and he bit the heat off me. And I'm no Billy to you, son. I'm the gaffer. I'm the boss. And I don't made that mistake again. But he was an absolutely wonderful man just to work for and work with. And just, as I say, when he was in a room, you just wanted to listen to him. You just wanted to hear his thoughts in the game, what he went through. And at that time, Celtic as a team, the first year I was there, it was their centenary year. And funny, I remember game against Dunfermline at the end of the season. I think it was the last game of the season. And the Dunfermline fans had a banner saying "Happy Birthday Celtic," which I always thought was a brilliant touch. But at that time, we had Bobby Lennox as the reserve coach, who was another Lisbon Lion, and it was just, you couldn't help but learn from these guys. And yeah, I mean, I only played only made a few appearances for the first team, but the football education that you were getting day in, day out, just from being around these people and seeing how they prepared. Bobby Lennox was fitter than us in his 40s, than we were as teenagers. And he kept that fitness up with his work rate. So you had all these examples of good practice, great players, guys like Paul McStay, John Collins, guys, role models that you just looked up to and couldn't help but learn from. So it really gave me a brilliant grounding for my career.
See at that point, obviously, you're a young boy. Are you absorbing that and asking loads of questions, or are you just kind of, this is my life, I'm taking it for granted? And then on reflection, you think, wish I'd done more, wish I'd listened more.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I was probably somewhere in between that. I wasn't the perfect pupil by any manner of means. I was the idiot in the classroom. I was always the one that was trying to make everybody laugh and have a carry on, because that was just my personality. But, there were times where I did appreciate there and then, what I was going through. But when you're young, you don't take in everything, that's happening. And with hindsight, I go, I could have done this. But I've got absolutely no regrets in terms of, I just wasn't at the level required, to stay in the team consistently. But as I say, the lessons learned and the opportunities that I got through being there, some of the players that you played against in youth tournaments, some of the places that you got to, we went to Japan, played against Dennis Bergkamp in a youth final, so just things that, money can't buy, and what a brilliant experience at the time, and also to look back on.
Amazing, mate. Right, I'm going to fast forward a wee bit. You had a wee spell at Dundee, but I'm going to touch on East End Park. So July 1996, you get the opportunity to come to the mighty Pars. How does all that come about, and what's your memories of joining up with Bert and Dick?
I know, it was the best period of my whole career, so I can only look back with fond memories. How it happened, I knew I was leaving Dundee. I went to France on trial, because it was just when the Bosman era had kicked in, so you were able to go abroad free. So I'd went there on trial, I'd been quite impressed with the team that I was at, Laval, our first division team. And I'd come back and they'd made me an offer, and then Bert had got in touch, and I went to meet Bert and Paul de Mello initially up at the Horn restaurant just off the motorway. I was living in Dundee at the time, and I met Paul and Bert there, and again, just good football people, and whenever you come across them, I've been really fortunate in my career, the amount of good people I've worked with, but Bert, Dick, everybody at the club, wee Paul, but just even the backroom staff, it's brilliant. I see that Mo's getting his testimonial. You guys like Mo, you drum, you had Joe Nelson, just fantastic people. And that first meeting with Bert, right away, I remember going back to my wife, Claire, and saying, that's what I want to do. Past obviously being promoted into the Premier League, so an opportunity to play in the Premier League. And I had also, and that's just coincidentally, I had been at a coaching course just at the end of that season, and Dick had been my tutor. So I'd got to know Dick quite well during that 9 or 10 days as well. As I say, so when Bert made me the offer, it was an easy decision.
And at that point, the league, they just won the first division. The club was on such a high. It must have been a great environment to just go into straight away.
It was fantastic. It was just a great atmosphere about the club, about the town. Everybody you met, they were just buzzing for the season to start. And I remember as well, one of the first sort of off the pitch duties, there was the club were launching a video from the championship season, and one of my music heroes was part of it, Stuart Adamson, and I remember just Stuart came to the launch. I couldn't even speak to him. I was in such awe of him. I was just sitting there, just looking at him, and I think he'd sort of said hello at one point, like gibbering fool, But just everything that was happening at the club, everything was positive. With a great pre-season. Even I remember some of the games, great games that we played, English opposition, really good standard. So just everything about the place was on the up, and it was a great time to be at the club.
Yeah, I think we played Southampton that pre-season.
That's right.
But this is Souness, I think, was the manager, wasn't he?
That's right.
That season, we finished 5th in the Premier League, which was incredible. We got to the League Cup semi-final. It was just a brilliant season, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's like that. As I say, I was fortunate coming in to a really good team who had that momentum from the championship winning season. They had get used to winning football games, which is the best habit you can get into. And we just kept that momentum going. Yeah, good start in the League Cup. I remember we played St Mirren early on at East End, and it was we beat them. I remember I think we played Thistle as well, maybe in the quarters.
Yep.
But that gives you momentum, and that gives you confidence when you're getting that good performances and results in the cup, and the guys carried that into the league. I'm not saying, it wasn't all plain sailing, but really the core players from the championship season, they set the tone, and pulled the rest of us along with them.
And you had a brilliant season. I think you got the Players Player of the Year as well, and a couple of the fan awards, didn't you?
Okay, as I said earlier, it was the best period of my career. I just hit the ground running right away. Good pre-season, which always helps. But then you get confidence from the people around you, and Dick and Bert had confidence in me. I struck up some really good partnerships on and off the pitch. I was travelling with Stuart Petrie and Craig Ireland, and me and Stuart had a really good relationship on the pitch as well. Big Andy Smith, Hamish. There was just a lot of people that were in tune with the way that I played and with my personality as well. Just good people, and we got on really well, both on and off the pitch. So I say it was hard not to do well. Just everything was, all the stars were aligned. It was just a great time.
Superb, mate. Right, during your time at Dunfermline, you scored 20 goals. So we'll dip in and out at Dunfermline again, but we'll talk about your general football career. So I've got 20 questions.
Okay.
20 goals for the club, 20 questions. So we'll kick off. Number one, What was your favourite moment playing football?
So many. I think from a personal level, it was going with Thistle to Dundee in the quarterfinals at the Cup, and I scored a goal that I could only have dreamed of. It was just one of them that I would have tried 300 times and it wouldn't have come off. And it came off, but it was just the whole atmosphere of the game. We were the underdogs. We were in the first division. Dundee were going well in the Premier League. We scored a late winner. One of the kids, Andy Gibson, came on, and got the winner. A local boy from Postle, and it was a brilliant atmosphere. We got Rangers in the semi-final, a lot of money for the club. So yeah, it was just a brilliant feeling to be able to deliver something that nobody really expected us to do.
Superb. Right, number 2. This applies to your good self. The funniest player in the dressing room, and any stories that stick in your mind.
I mean, I could probably give a few about myself. A few at Dunfermline. I remember poor big Evo Den Beeman had the big dolly, had his Citroen car that he absolutely adored, and we just used to absolutely slaughter him for it. I remember stealing that one day, driving it around the track. Somebody was driving it for me, and I was standing in the roof and just ended up in the centre circle. We left it in the centre circle. I mean, I got into bother a couple of times at Dunfermline, just for pranks, as I say. I was always just trying to think of things that would lighten the mood, give everybody a laugh. I was injured at one point, sitting behind the dugout, and I think it was St Johnstone were playing. The game wasn't really going very well, but I saw the mic from the PA sitting there, so I picked it up and I sung, "If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands." I'm sure it was that. Which didn't really go down too well, given that the game wasn't really going too well. I got away with it that time, but then I grabbed at another game and I made an announcement that there was a car had been broken into. Please go back to your vehicle, and I made a joke about something to do with a dog being in the car, just something stupid basically. And I remember Bert pulling me in, and he was going, What are you up to? He says, I mean, come on, you take things too far. So that I probably did take things too far there. I remember George Shaw as well, my old striking partner, who was the most vain person that I've ever met. Absolutely immaculate, he's spotless. Half an hour after training, he'd hardly any hair, so he had to do a lot of work, I suppose, to keep it looking in its prime. But he'd blow dried his hair after every training session, which was madness. The rest of the boys would just shake their head and that was it. So he had his own hairdryer, honestly. So I remember one day I cut the cord off it, but I left just a tiny wee sort of cord and I put the plug back onto it. So basically his hairdryer was working, but the cord was only that length, and the socket was on the floor of the dressing room. So I thought, right, he's not going to use it, so we'll get a laugh with that his hair will be a riot, because it was the old comb over, no Bobby Charlton, to make sure that he was covering everything. But then I went in, and he was actually lying on the floor, blow drying his hair. He couldn't leave the dressing room without it done. But I say, really fortunate, the players I played with, in terms of characters. Ray Farningham, I loved Ray, still do, Ray, former Dunfermline player. I didn't play with Ray at Dunfermline, I played with him at Dundee and Thistle, but brilliant guy with some great times with Jinky, great fun with George as well. Chick Charnley, I mean, just you didn't know what was happening from 1 minute to the next with Chick. And I don't know, as I say, I was probably the dafty in the middle of a lot of it, and I was probably then a magnet for these types of characters that just seem to gravitate towards me, but I loved it. And don't get me wrong, I mean, we did take it too far at times, never, maybe once or twice, maybe a bit too far. But most of the time, I mean, I can remember, when I played at Dundee, I smoked during my career. I mean, thinking back now, I smoked all the way through my career, stopped when I finished playing,
Just mad, eh?
Ridiculous. But anyway, I remember we were staying at the the Hilton in Edinburgh prior to the Coca-Cola semi-final with Dundee, and I was smoking in the room, and the fire alarm went off by accident. I was obviously too near the alarm or something. So, I mean, everybody got evacuated, fire engines coming from all over Edinburgh, and I'm like, sorry guys, because they came out and said, oh, it's been activated in that room. I said, sorry, that was me on my cigarette. So we went back there for the final. So we played the semi there, and we'd won, went back to the final. And I remember we were going up to the rooms, and Jim Duffy was the manager, and Duff says, come here a minute. He says, can you do what you did the last time with the fire alarm? I says, what are you talking about? He says, yeah, can you just set off the fire alarm again? Duff was so superstitious. And I said, yeah, Duff, are you serious? I said, it costs thousands of pounds and blah, 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 putting people at risk and fire engines and all that. I went, I know, but we need to do the same again. We need to do this. I didn't do it. But he wanted me to do it. Maybe that was how he never played me in the final. He put me on the bench.
That's why he didn't win it. Brilliant stuff. You mentioned Bert Paton there. We'll go back to Bert. What was Bert like to work for?
Just an absolute dream. Him and Dick were a great combination. You know, Bert some people would probably take him the wrong way and think, you know, that he wasn't, you know, he was, because he was quieter than Dick, and Dick was right in your face, you know, that maybe Bert didn't have the passion or the desire. Oh my God, he did, you know. And again, he was a guy like Billy McNeil, was similar calibre of man, you know, just a brilliant man manager, somebody that you wanted to be with. I mean, when I met him at the game that I went through to last season, you know, you're hanging on his every word, because the man has just got such knowledge and such football intelligence, you know, you just want to listen to him. So I just used to, again, I'm just so fortunate. Not only was there Bert and Dick, but it was Davy McParland as well at the time. You know, Davy was running the youth academy, and I just used to, when we would finish training, I would go into the house with the groundsman for a quick fag, and then I would usually go in and see Davy McParland, because Davy would be in the office, getting his sessions planned and all the rest of it, you know, and just sit and talk to Davy, you know. And again, just that knowledge and football intelligence, and it was absolutely brilliant, you know. And it was guys like that really set my chain of thought in terms of, that's what I wanted to do, you know. I wanted to develop young players. That was my aim at that time, and that was why I was doing all my coaching badges. But Bert was just, in terms of man management, in terms of motivation, he knew the game. You know, he'd let Dick get on with the coaching aspect of it, but in a match day, you know, he would set the team out, he would give you instructions, he would make any adjustments during the game, often in a quiet, you know, measured manner, but just an absolute dream to play under.
He's still like that when you go to the games. He'll make a little comment and he just spots things like, no ball, like that boy shouldn't be in that position, he should drop back 5 yards or whatever it might be, and you just think, this guy's like on a different level.
But he is. I mean, he played at the highest level, and
of course,
and he managed in the Premier League, as you say, taking us to fifth place, which was no mean feat given the expectations. So no, a genius there, man.
And the two of them, him and Dick, just breathed on Fairman as well, didn't they? So
great. I mean, and that's what everybody wants at their club. You know, you want people with that feeling and passion that you don't always get now, you know, which is it's disappointing. So to have the two of them, I mean, it was bringing the two of them together was absolute genius. You know, you couldn't have got better, especially for the Pals at that time, and they deserved all the success that they got.
Top class. Right, question 3. Favourite piece of memorabilia?
God, it's got to be strips, and one of them would definitely be the Pals kit, the purple kit. I got it out recently for the charity I work for, Street Soccer, and we've got this initiative where we're recycling kits and selling them for our programmes. So we had a wee sort of launch event. So I wore the purple Pals kit, which I thought was an absolute cracker. And so many people would come up to me going, who's that? What's that badge? And who's that? Just getting the chat going. Yeah, I mean, I've not really got great. I've kept strips from most of my clubs, but I'm not really big on. And I think any medals that I've got are probably at my mum's. And if you come into my house, I think somebody said that to me once. Come in and said, "I thought you used to be a footballer." I'm like, yeah, I was. I'm like, well, I come into your house and there's nothing, there's no one bit, there's no a jersey or a photograph or anything about medals or anything. So I'm probably more, as I say, I've got my jerseys, loved them. I loved the fact that my pals' jerseys were Britton 10, so I can kid on to my kids that I was a different type of player than I was, because they think, oh, you're a number 10, Dad. I'm like, yeah, number 10.
Only because Big Andy had number 9, though, yeah.
That was it. And I remember Craig Robertson saying to me, because the first season, we didn't have the specific numbers that we choose. Because Big Andy had obviously, I want to be number 9. I was never that bothered about numbers. I had wore up all sorts of numbers. Robbo said, because Robbo was 8, Craig Robertson, and he said, what about, and I think somebody else, maybe it was Bingy or Stuart, was maybe 10 at that time. I can't remember. And Stuart, Robbo had said, well, what about number 8? You want to be number 8? Because I think all the other numbers were taken. Hamish was 7. Hamish was 7. I was like, mate, I don't want to take your number. And he went, no, you take it. So Robbo let me wear number 8 for a while. And then when we got to the next season, when you were getting the specific ones, and I was 10, so I was kidding on. I was Diego Armando, who was brilliant.
Brilliant. A wee secret, when I had the 97 kit, I had 10 Britton on the back of that. There you go. Number 4, you kind of touched on it earlier about superstitions. What was your pre-match routine, and did you have any superstitions?
Yeah, I mean, probably not superstitions, but just that I did the same thing all the time. I got up early, had my breakfast, I would go back, I would try and get back to bed, I would eat the same things. It was always eggs. It was usually eggs. I would eat boiled or scrambled. And then my routine, my warm-up routine, kept the same, but I wasn't like one of them. I mean, played with guys, that had to touch every wall in the dressing room and had to header the ball 15 times and all that type of stuff. I remember with George, it was always the same suit. George wore the same suit. There was a lot of players like that. I remember Lambie as well, lucky suits and all that, lucky pants, lucky socks and all that stuff. So I didn't really have that, but yeah, probably just in terms of I had a routine that I thought worked for me, and I would just try and stick to it every game.
Brilliant. You mentioned there some of the other superstitions. Was there any boys you played with that just had an absolute bonkers superstition?
I don't think there was anything really outlandish. I mean, there was real variety. I mean, I know quite a few players that were religious, so they would be in the shower room or whatever, praying. You would get other guys that wanted music blaring, and so the music would be blaring in the dressing room. I can't really think of anything bonkers, because part of my routine was finding somewhere to have a fag, so I probably missed half of the daft ones.
Yeah, imagine a player doing that nowadays, eh?
I know. It's just it's a changed world, and a lot of things for the better, thankfully, and that's definitely one of them.
Superb. You mentioned music there. Nice link up. So question 5, favourite song of all time?
I mean, I've got real varied taste. Everything from Elvis, Jamiroquai, Oasis, you name it. Favourite song of all time, it would probably be The King. Yeah, it would probably need to be Elvis, and take your pick for anything. Suspicious Minds, In the Ghetto, Return to Sender. He is the king, so it would be anything for Elvis.
Brilliant. Were you a player that would listen to music in the lead up to a match to inspire you? Or?
Back in the day, obviously it was before Spotify and mobile phones, so we would have Walkmans sometimes where your wee personal headphones on. I remember doing that sometimes. And then I would actually make tapes for the dressing room. I remember doing that a few times for different clubs, and I would say to everybody, right, what's the song that gets you going? And so all the boys would say, it's this, this, and this. And I would then, like back in the day, making audio tapes so that we could then play in the ghetto blaster before the games. I think music's really important, not just in sport, but life in general, and it definitely lifts a mood, and can set a tone. So yeah, it's important, and it's probably even more important now in sport and football, which is great.
What's your thoughts on footballers now that just sit with headphones on and don't communicate and in their own wee world?
I know, and don't get me wrong, as I say, the players I've played with, everybody had a wee time where they got in a zone, but I liked, the sort of camaraderie and the banter and being on the bus together and carrying on. And, as I say, I can remember it was maybe like we Walkmans and listen to some music before the game, but only for a short period. You wouldn't have got away with that in my day, just sitting there and no interacting, because as a team, you have to connect, you have to communicate, and it starts the minute you prep. You're starting to prep for the game. It's not just when you walk out in that pitch. It's when you arrive that morning. It's the night before, when you're thinking about what you're going to do. So yeah, it's a strange one. There's got to be a sort of fine line, I'd say.
So it's a changed world, eh? Number 6, who was your toughest opponent?
Quite a few. I think one that stands out would probably be Richard Gough. Just a real athlete, good ball player, really physical, fit as a fiddle. You just one of the guys that even if you got away from him, you knew he would come back at you, real combative, on the pitch, but could also play as well, and I didn't get the better of him too often. So yeah, he was probably the toughest.
Good choice. Number 7, 82 career goals, 20 of which were at the Pars. Is there a goal, you mentioned one earlier, is there a goal that stands out throughout your career?
Yeah, the one for Thistle at Dundee is probably the one that people, Thistle fans, will remember and pull me up about it. There's a few for the Pars that stand out. We played Wraith in a derby just about New Year. I'm sure, and I scored a goal that day. I think we maybe won 2. I think we maybe won 2-0. But yeah, just derby games. You want to win it for yourself, but you want to win it for the supporters and the bragging rights that they get. So they're even more important than any other game. So to score in that game was fantastic. I also remember scoring from about 10 centimetres at Motherwell, the first season that we stayed up, and this was the game that sort of cemented that we were going to be in the Premier League the next year. As you say, we finished up 5th, but yeah, I think it was rolling in anyway, and I did what all strikers do. I took the credit and knocked it in for a yard or something. But again, just because of the sort of situation and what it meant, it's really, really, really memorable.
I remember that one. Do you mind your celebration that day when you scored that?
I think I pulled my shorts up.
You did?
It was something to do, I know, because I had a few stupid ones. It was something to do with Craig Island. I remember we were carrying on about some. I think it was like, the 80s sort of players. And at that time, Dunfermline, the kit was cool. We had like sort of baggy, long shorts and all the rest of it that was in vogue then. And so that had something to do with that. But just stupidity as usual, something daft.
Brilliant. I remember it well. Number 8. If you could replay a match in your career, what one would it be?
God, that's a very good question. I mean, I've got to admit, I mean, there's plenty of games that I've lost in my career, and I wish I had won. But I don't really have any real regrets. Probably things like if I had to, change one game, we got to when I was at Celtic, when I was just starting out, and we got to the semi-final of the Scottish Cup, and I was on the bench and I got on. And this was the year that Motherwell won it, 91, I think.
Yeah.
But it was an absolutely brilliant game again for a neutral. Motherwell ended up beating us 4-2. Colin O'Neill, I remember, scored an absolute worldie from about 35 yards. The big Pat Bonner didn't even see. So because that was really, really disappointing, because it led to, it was a sort of domino. Big Billy ended up getting the sack on the back of it and things like that. So that was probably a turning point for the club and for me at that time. So yeah, that's probably one game that if I could pick, that it would have been good if we could have won that one.
Brilliant. You mentioned them there, so this might be the answer to the next one. Number 9. Who was the best manager or coach you worked with, and why?
Well, honestly, so many. We spoke about a few already. Billy, Dick, and Bert, John as well. I had Big Leash as well at Livingston, which was an absolute dream as well. When Leash was working with Davy Hay and John Robertson, I had Big Terry Butcher at Motherwell, Ray Stewart at Livingston. Liam Brady is probably the one coach manager that I think of, and it's not all positive, unfortunately, given that he was such a absolutely fantastic player. So I would say it would be between 3, if I'm honest. It would be between Bert, Big Billy and Lambie, because the 3 of them I thought got the best out of me in different ways and using different means. Really, really brilliant managers. They read people so well. They knew what made them tick. They knew what people could do. They knew their limitations. They knew when to push buttons to get people to a different level. So yeah, the 3 of them were absolutely outstanding.
Would you say that was a key component with the 3, the man management side? Is that what gave them that edge?
Definitely. I mean, coaching and managing is obviously different, but probably at the levels that I played at, the players, there's not a great deal between them, in terms of their abilities and their football and intelligence. So to get that wee bit extra comes, I would say, from, that motivation and that intrinsic desire. And if you can get somebody that can flick that switch for you on a regular basis, as those 3 guys definitely could, then things are going to go well.
Number 10, the most underrated player you've played with.
So many again. One that stands out from Dunfermline, again, there's so many players that supporters maybe get early opinions, and they stick, because we're all like that. We all stick with our opinions most of the time, and maybe don't see, the work that people are doing off the ball, the help that they're giving teammates. It can be instructions, or it can just be motivations. And at Dunfermline, I always felt Harry Curran got a really hard time. Harry was an absolute brilliant player in terms of ability and skill. If you played wee games, 3-a-side, 4-a-side games, you're going to get the ball off Harry. He was absolutely fantastic. He's a great character to travel through in the car with him, great fun. Went on a couple of trips abroad with him, just the life and soul, a brilliant guy to be around, and a player that everybody wanted things to go well for him. But unfortunately, just for whatever reason, supporters maybe didn't have that same feeling for him, and so I think he was really underrated, not just by Dunfermline supporters. I think in general, there's a bit of a disservice in terms of what he did in the game and his career. He was as I say, I felt he was a brilliant player and a great guy to have as a teammate.
Great choice. And where is he now? Because we cannot find him.
I know. I said to wee Alan Moore last year, what's happening with Harry, because he stayed in Brigton in Glasgow, and the last I heard he was doing his taxi driving. I know, because he's somebody that you would want to get a hold of, especially to get him on something like this, Mikey, honestly, because he is a one funny character, you know, and he would brilliant stories through his career. I mean, United, Thistle, St Johnstone, the Pars, you know, he had a great career as well, played with some great players and really good managers, aye, but that's it. Let's find Harry, that's a challenge for the rest of the year. Where are you, Harry?
We're proud to sponsor this podcast. At Flow Clinic, we are all about helping more people take control of their health, whatever that means for you. Helping you tackle weight loss, sort your skin, or take control with those men's health matters. No waiting rooms, no awkward moments. Just expert care done conveniently and discreetly online, with everything delivered in your terms. Find out more at flowclinic.com. That's PHLO clinic.com. Flow Clinic, your health in your hands.
Definitely. Number 11, favourite football shirt of all time. And it's either one you've worn as a player or just a football shirt as a supporter that you've loved.
I must have been about 18, and it was just the first black football kit I'd ever seen. It was Juventus away, it was just all black. And I remember buying that and thinking I was a right cool dude, you know, walking about with that one. My favourite kit has to be my first kit, I remember. I must have been about 3 or 4. And it was a West Ham jersey. And my favourite player at the time must have been Bobby Moore, because I had 4 in white tape on the back. You know, it wasn't even like, you know, you can take it to the shop now and get your name and number and all the rest of it. You probably could have then, but I didn't. I just had this white tape, the number 4, and I must have wore it. I mean, I remember saying to my mum at one point, I mean, why did you not keep my first jersey? She's like, keep your first jersey? She says, you never had it off. You had it on every day for about 2 years, even when we would get your other jerseys in, you still wanted to wear that. So, that was definitely my favourite of all time, definitely.
Superb. It's changed days. You used to wear football kits till they fell apart when you were a kid.
I know, brilliant.
And even when I was growing up in the 90s, like, you would have like maybe a Dunfermline kit and a Scotland kit, and you'd be lucky to even have that.
That's it.
Like, nowadays kids have got everything, eh?
I know. Birthday and Christmas, that's what you'd hope for, you know, can I get a kit? You wouldn't always get them, but like as you say, so you would maybe get one or two a year, and that was just, you had to choose wisely. I remember a cracking Coventry kit, Southampton. I would always know, just be looking, right, I really like that one, so I want that, so I would get all sorts of different ones. Loads of Scotland as well, but I try and get a wee bit of variety.
Class, mate. Right, number 12. Who was the best player you played with in your career?
Again, really for every club I was at, you know, there was a standout. Celtic, guys like Paul McStay, Charlie Nicholas, Frank McAvenny, you know, absolute class. Dundee, boys like Big Morton Vikos was a absolutely fantastic player. Dusan Verto, Dunfermline, Big Toddy, you know, an absolute standout. What a athlete, what a player. He could absolutely play anywhere, and it's great to see the Waynes doing so well, you know, up just chip off the old block, absolutely brilliant. And then Thistle, Chick was a standout. Livingston, David Fernandez, a brilliant player. Bingy was absolutely outstanding when I played with him at Livingston. He was brilliant. So some absolutely brilliant players there. I think probably ability-wise and just the career that he had, although I didn't play in the same team a lot, trained with him a lot. Paul McStay, you know, he was just so consistent. Paul was underrated, you know, for what he was delivering on a weekly basis, for what wasn't he really a standout Celtic team a lot of the time that Paul played for, and he stuck with the team. Brilliant personality, you know, brilliant captain. You know, he wasn't the most vocal, but you know, he was motivating and he was inspirational just by trying to follow what he did. But not only that, I mean, seeing training, he trained the way he played, so he set a standard for everybody at the club that the vast majority couldn't even get close to. But you know, it was aspirational, and just watching him, and he saw things way before anybody else. You know, he was just, an absolutely standout player in person.
And he was someone that suffered bad injuries as well. You wonder if he hadn't got the injuries where he could have.
I know, and because I think it was 31 when he retired, Paul. And I remember speaking to him. I still keep in touch with him because I was really friendly with his wee brother Raymond, and he's in Australia and he came back just last year, and so he messages now and again. But I remember he had said, 31, and he went, I could keep playing, but he said he's got a big family. But I think he's got 5 kids. He says, I don't want to be crippled when I'm 40, 50. I want to still be able to enjoy my life. He's a clever guy. He's went on to do really well in his business that he's set up, Paul. So yeah, I think probably injuries, but also you would have loved to have seen him play. The top leagues at the time. It was probably Italy. Like Souness was playing with Sampdoria. When Paul was probably tempted a lot of the times to leave Celtic, but that was his club, and that's where he wanted to play. He wanted to try and make them better. Yeah, but maybe with hindsight, if you could have got him to have a few years in a top European team, who knows where it could have ended up.
Yeah, totally. You mentioned Livingston there. Let's touch a wee bit on your time at Livingston and Big Leash. What a time to be at Livingston, getting to the Premier League, and what a squad he had built there as well. It
was brilliant. I mean, I was only there 2 years, but they were going for it. Put it this way, So anybody that played well against us, they get signed. We played Wraith one Saturday, and they pumped us 4-0. And we went into the dressing room on the Monday. Alec Burns, Marvin Andrews, and Stevie Tosh, who had all been playing for Wraith on the Saturday, had been signed on the Sunday for Livingston. So you guys like that, but like David Bingham was just different level at that point, full of confidence. What we all knew he was capable of at Dunfermline, but probably hadn't been able to deliver it on a weekly basis. You would see bits and pieces of what Bingham was capable of, but by the time he was at Livy, he'd matured as a player and a person, and just absolute standout. But boys like I mentioned, David Fernandez, Javier Sanchez Broto, the keeper, it was a really, really strong squad. And a great time, as you say, to be at the club.
Superb. And Big Leash, what was he like?
It was absolutely brilliant. I love him. I nearly, you can ask him, I think it's one of the scariest moments he's ever had in his life. We had a night out at Aviemore pre-season, and the biggin was away somewhere, so we were just hiding from him, basically, so that we could get up to no good. And I remember we saw him about 1 a.m, and he was just stoating up the road himself back to the hotel. So I did this sort of maze through the trees to try and get ahead of him, and basically jumped out in front of him, and the biggin doubled over. He really had a heart attack. But just you talk about man managers. Pre-match, the biggin, you went out on the pitch thinking you were 8 foot tall. He was another just inspirational character. Infectious, his enthusiasm for the game and for people. He just wanted to meet people and get to know people and find out what makes them tick. And again, so I hadn't really played a great deal. I think my last game I scored a hat-trick, right enough. Played against the Airdrie, I think it was the second last game of the season, and I'd probably only started maybe 12 games or something, and I was 30 odds, I think. So I really wanted to play. But I remember, so we'd won the league, got promoted, and Big Leash was like that. He says, look, you're brilliant about the place. He says, you're a great personality, great character, great for the club. He says, stay on, you'll enjoy being back in the Premier League with us. So that's the type of guy that he was, he really looked after you, if you were the right type. So, and I was really grateful that he did get the offer, but I obviously wanted to play more regularly, so that's why I stayed in the Championship with Thistle. But great time, great guy to work for.
Superb, mate. Right, number 13, favourite film?
Oh, it's probably a choice between either Godfather, Field of Dreams, or up. It's a bit of a varied collection there, but
Yeah.
4 daughters, you know, I've probably seen every Disney or Pixar film for the past 30 years over and over again. So Up's probably my favourite there. I love mafia films for that sort of era, you know, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino. These guys are just top class actors, and Godfather's probably the best of them all. Field of Dreams, it's a feel good film, you know, I love it. Kevin Costner, I think he's a brilliant actor as well, and it's just a feel good film, and if you want a wee bit of inspiration, then stick that one in and have a watch.
Definitely. One of my favourites, that one as well. Field of Dreams, class. Number 14. What was the best perk of being a footballer?
There was many. Believe me, there was many. I mean, staying fit, playing the game you love, getting paid for it. You know, the hours. Like, you're finishing up lunchtime most days. You're probably only working 4 days during the week, and then getting paid to play the best bit of the week. You know, getting paid to play on a Saturday with the prospect of getting a few quid if you got a win. You know, what's not to like about it? And you also got, you know, the wee freebie entry to nightclubs now and again, Mikey.
I've heard.
But I just think football, it's the universal language, you know. No matter where you go, you know, if you've got a love of football, you'll find people that love football, and it's a great, you know, leveler, you know, with people. Even when after I had left football and I was working in the law, you know, I would see it being an icebreaker in so many situations. You know, if I was getting into police stations or into cells in court with people, you know, who are in a real anxious situation a lot of the time, you know, and some of them would be like that. You know, I know your face, mate. You know, did you play football? You know, and aye. So you get that conversation going, and people are relaxed and chilled a wee bit. So it's just, for me, I mean, I just had a love of the game I was born from my dad, and it'll never leave us, you know. So to be able just to live it and to feel it every day, you know, throughout your life, it's been a dream for me. But nothing beats playing, you know. That's why I still play with my mates on a Tuesday night, you know. So to be able to do it at a decent level on a weekly basis, I mean, it's just what an opportunity, man. Brilliant.
Superb, mate. Right, number 15 leads us on nicely. What was the best piece of advice you ever received in your career?
Oh, again, I had so many good counsellors, and I probably didn't pay attention to most of them. I remember Tommy Burns being absolutely brilliant with us as kids at Celtic. Tommy was reaching the end of his Celtic career, so he played quite a few games in the reserves with us. And again, he was just a sage, you know. He was just a guy that had seen it all, but he wasn't scared to sort of rock the boat a wee bit, you know, to sort of row against the tide and to say things, you know, that weren't maybe what everybody wanted. So, I mean, advice-wise, it would just be, you know, about lifestyle, you know, and decisions, about now opportunities and situations that come up especially when you're a young player. So Tommy was really good in terms of just, you know, keeping us focused. You know, this is your dream. You want to play for this club. You love this club, you know, and so again, you couldn't help but follow his lead. So Tommy was right up there. Another guy that had a real impact on me was a guy called Noel Blake that I played with at Dundee, and I still keep in touch with Big Blakey now. He's got involved with the street soccer charity that I work for. We work in London as well, so I've got Noel involved there. But no, I was at an age where 25 when I met him, and Noel was heavily into, you know, looking after yourself, warming up properly, stretching, warming down, all these types of things that as a young player I had sort of just paid lip service to. But when I met Noel at 25, and, you know, and he would say to me, you know, this will prolong your career, you know, if you look after yourself now, Blakey was probably maybe early 30s then. So he'd done it all, you know. He'd been a top player at Leeds, Portsmouth, down south, and he'd come up to Dundee. So again, just his character and the way that he put points across, you couldn't fail but take it on. So I started to, and that's probably why maybe I had that purple patch at Dunfermline and thereafter, you know, played probably longer than I thought I would have, and a lot of that is down to the lessons that I learned from Blakey when I was like sort of early to, mid 20s, and I started to, the penny dropped a wee bit and I took it on board.
Let's touch on that then. So with Dunfermline, you had a really good first season, decent second season, but by the third season you were making more substitute appearances. What was the reason for that?
Yeah, I know, it was the end of the first season. I had picked up a knee injury. I'm sure, or maybe it was the second season. Maybe it was the second season. So I picked up a knee injury. So I missed pre-season and I missed the start of the season. And it didn't get diagnosed early enough, unfortunately. And so I was told, yeah, it's okay, just keep playing, you'll get through it. But I knew that wasn't going to be the case. So I eventually got an operation that did sort the problem. It wasn't anything serious, but it was just a niggling thing that was sort of holding me back. So that probably took me maybe to about November then, you know, to start to think I was fit. And then I just never really get into the flow of the season. I always feel that if you miss pre-season, you're always sort of playing catch up. So yeah, no, I really struggled. I went to Wraith on loan, which was good. I got some games, some minutes, came back. And to be fair, I mean, I was getting some game time, but yeah, it just wasn't flowing through us. I wasn't doing what I knew I could for whatever reason. And the team, we were struggling a bit. Bert left in January, which did have an impact. You know, Dick came in and obviously tried to steady the ship, and we couldn't ultimately. But yeah, it was probably just a combination of, you know, the team maybe not firing, me not firing, and then probably the icing on the cake was Bert leaving.
Plus by then the whole dressing room had changed. There was like an influx of English boys coming in. A lot of the Evo Dembemans, Derek Flemings, Greg Shaws, etc. They were all kind of going. It was a totally different dressing room, wasn't it?
No, you're right. It was a totally different squad. And I mean, that is football. That happens. You know, team squads have got to evolve, but sometimes they evolve too quickly. You know, and too many of the sort of core players move on at the one time. You know, and that can have a dramatic impact on performance. If, like, I was talking about Harry earlier, you know, people like that aren't necessarily first pick, but they have such an influence on the whole dynamic of the group, because a lot of the work that goes into a winning performance happens not just away through the Saturday 3 o'clock, but sometimes away through the training ground. You know, it can be things that are done in conversations away. And if you've got good people that can bring that group together and keep it focused in the right manner, you know, sometimes you have to keep them in the tent rather than pushing them all out at the one time.
Back to the questions, mate. 16. What advice would you give to a young footballer starting out today?
I mean, I think I actually heard this. You were asking about advice earlier on, and I think I heard this from Richard Gough when he was still playing, when he was 40-year-old, you know, and he said, you know, you just treat each game as if it's your last, you know, and I suppose it's fine, Richard, saying that at 40, you know, and you might think that when you're in your 30s or whatever, right, I need to make the most of this. It's harder to do that when you're a kid, you know, when you're a teenager and you think, you know, I've got my whole life in front of me, as you do. But if you could have that intensity, you know, in every game that you think, this is my last 90 minutes here, I need to make the most of it. So if you could somehow bottle that feeling and get kids to take that on and just enjoy it, because it is a brilliant period of your life, you know, that you'll try and replicate through, like me, staying involved in football and coaching or behind the scenes or whatever, because that's, you know, that's us attempting to replicate, you know, the actual playing, but nothing beats playing, you know, so trying to get that point across, probably Tommy Burns would have said it to me and I'd have said, oh, shut up, Tommy, you know, it's just, he's a ball, mate, you know, we're going to do this forever, you know, you don't appreciate it fully at the time, so if you could get that point across to kids, that's probably what I would try and do.
How did you cope when your career finished? So obviously being a footballer, you're on that kind of high and adulation from supporters, etc., and then all of a sudden it's gone.
I think I was fortunate in that, you know, I stayed involved, you know, through coaching or manager, assistant manager, you know, so you're still getting that buzz that we all love in terms of, you know, we love it as a supporter, we love it as a player, you know, just that 90 minutes, you know, that adrenaline rush. So I still got that. And I mean, I still even felt that, like when I was behind the scenes at Thistle, chief exec or whatever, you know, watching the game, I was probably even more nervous, you know, than I was when I actually played, you know, so you still get the highs and lows. As a player though, I do remember, I mean, my last game, I think I played a couple of games for Stranraer when I was player manager, but came off the bench, I think. But my last probably real attempt at playing was at Brecon. I'd have been like 35. And I was just part-time, but I can genuinely remember a game. And I think it was Airdrie. I can't remember if I'd come off the bench or if I'd started, but I just knew, I just felt I can't do anymore what I want to do, you know, on the pitch. You know, I was thinking I should be there and I wasn't getting there, or, you know, and it was just that one game, and I remember thinking, I'm past it. You know, I should genuinely think about chucking it, which isn't a nice feeling. But as I say, because I stayed involved in different capacities, I probably never had that, you know, cliff edge that a lot of players get, and it's hard. It's really, really hard to deal with. I've seen it in other players, and you know how they've not been able to deal with it and the sort of after effects. So yeah, I was fortunate, but as a real worry for some players, I think.
Definitely. We'll touch on your chief exec role in a wee bit. But next question, 17. What was your biggest regret in football?
Again, probably lucky that I've not got too many. I mean, one probably involves Dunfermline in a way that, you know, should I experienced living in France, you know, and playing in France, and that was at the time that for me it was the right decision, you know, because I came to Dunfermline and I had the best season of my career. Claire was pregnant and we had a beautiful, healthy baby that season, so everything was great, you know. But, you know, with hindsight and looking back across my whole career, I would have loved to have played abroad and experienced that, you know, because it wasn't the sort of done thing back then. You know, it's probably more common now, but then it wasn't, just to say, just the post-Bosman era. So I would love to have experienced that. But as I say, I've no regrets about it, because the flip side was that by not doing it, I came to Dunfermline, you know, and had an absolute whale of a time. So, I'm happy with my lot, mate.
Not many people choose Fife over France anyway, that's sure, mate. Number 18. What's your thoughts on modern day football?
I know it frustrates me at times, I've got to say. You know, I watch games and I see real talented players. The fitness levels are just through the roof compared to 20 years ago. But the end product, I don't think has got better. You know, I think, and it's an oxymoron probably, because players are fitter, they're spending more time working in the game than they did back in the 90s. But I think the rawness that we enjoyed and supporters enjoyed, that was part of the atmosphere and part of the game in the 90s in particular, I think a bit of that's gone. You know, the games I go to now, I don't really see it as evident. You know, I'm not really, I don't mind people making mistakes. I've got absolutely no problem. And I think there's a bit of fear now about making mistakes. And everybody's trying to play in a set way, it seems to me, rather than that surprise element. I mean, when you look at the best teams in the world, and funny, in English Premiership now, they're talking about long throws. You see Alisson going long to Salah, rather than all this, we play for the back all the time. It's fine doing that, but you've got to have a variety. So I think, things are a bit tighter now, and there's a bit more, of a stranglehold on how we play, less freedom in the players. And I don't want to sound like an old, sitting here with rose-coloured specs on, everything was always better. I don't think that, but just from a viewing point of view, I don't see the passion, and I don't feel the passion in the supporters that I think was there far more evident in the 90s anyway.
I just think players like yourself and Andy Smith don't exist now. Modern day strikers are just different now, eh?
But just even I watched that Old Firm game the other week, and there wasn't a tackle, a real tackle in it. And tackling's an art. It is should be a huge part of the game. And this physicality that we all loved. I loved it as a player. I loved watching it. Players coming together. I mean, Paolo Maldini, I could watch him all day, taking the ball off people, and the physicality is a huge part of the game, and it still is now, but in a different way. You're right. The way I played, the way Andy played, I'd be sent off the park. In the first 2 minutes, I remember starting a game for Thistle when I was a kid, and against Airdrie at Broomfield, I get punched about 3 times in the first 10 minutes. There was no mobile phones, there was no cameras. Ball would go to the other end of the pitch. Walter Kidd or Jimmy Sanderson would just stiffen me. So you grew eyes in the back of your head, but then when the opportunity came for me to do it back, I would do it back. And that was the game, So when you watch some games now and it's so sterile and there isn't that physical element that, as I say, tackling and defending, winning the ball, it's an art, it's a huge part of the game. And I don't think it's held in the same esteem. It definitely isn't as it should.
I agree, mate. I agree. Number 19, 363 appearances in Scottish football. What are you up to now? Post-football career. You spoke about earlier, you had a wee stint in coaching and management, and then you led into a chief exec role. So tell us a little bit about your time doing that.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Assistant manager, academy director at Thistle for 5 years that I absolutely loved. Then Ian Maxwell left to go to the SFA, so I took on Ian's role. Loved it. It was a bit of a turbulent time in Thistle's history, I've got to say. We went through COVID. Well, a South American country at times, the number of coups we had 5 boards in 5 years, so there was a lot of turmoil there. So I was just trying to steady the ship half the time, but really enjoyed it, working with good people, a different side of the game. I was still involved with transfers and development points for the academy, the women's team as well. We brought that in at the time, so it was really, really, really interesting, but challenging. Really challenging. 7 days a week. You name it. Barely a day off the whole year. So it was tough on the family. But I loved it because it's my local club as well. So I get great affinity for the club, having played there as well. Good people involved. So, as I say, great experience for me in seeing other sides of the game that I hadn't when I'd just been coach, manager or whatever. And I think good life skills that it gave me for hopefully taking forward in what I'm doing now.
Superb. And tell us, what are you doing now?
Yeah, so I work with a charity, Street Soccer, and we use football as a hook to try and get people back on track that are experiencing either homelessness, addiction, long-term unemployment, or been in the criminal justice system. So we're all over Scotland. We're in London as well. We do the Homeless World Cup squads for Scotland and England. We work with about 1,600 players every week, providing free football sessions. We've got sessions all through Fife. We've got one in Dunfermline as well at Dullock at the Leisure Centre. And it's great. It's brilliant. Our staff are amazing. The guys are inspirational, and the girls that come in onto the programmes, and it just gives you a real boost to be around, people like that, and the situations that they're going through, and the positivity that they display towards life when they've got no reason to be as optimistic as they are. You can't help feel inspired. So it's great to be involved in it and to try and help the charity make a difference in these lives.
Must be so rewarding as well, being involved in that, changing people's lives, eh?
It's brilliant, and as I say, it's just inspirational seeing our staff and what they do when you know what they're having to go through every day. A lot of our staff have got lived experience, so they're still on their own journey, but they're then helping people that are experiencing what they've experienced, and the empathy that they show, and it really is inspiring. So as I say, you can't help but feel better and happier about your own lot, when you're watching how these people deal with situations. Brilliant.
Superb. Sounds like life's good for you now. Do you miss working in football, Gerry?
I miss the games, I've got to say, Mikey. Like I said earlier, it didn't matter. Can't beat playing, but still being involved with the club, and so you still get caught up in the game, which is brilliant. So I miss that, but I love what I'm doing, and I love being able to, if I go to watch, watch the Pars last season. I've been to watch Queen's Park this season. It's great, just being able to go to a game and maybe nobody biting your nails for the whole 90 minutes. Just trying and enjoy the atmosphere. And I've been lucky as well. I've been to a couple of trips abroad. I went to see Bologna, Juventus, Derek Ferguson that I played with Dunfermline, still pally with Derek, and his son, obviously Lewis, is absolutely flying. So went over there. So being able to do things like that I wasn't able to do when I was involved in the game has been brilliant.
Starting to enjoy your life again, mate. Last question, number 20. 1996 to 99, 65 starts, 20 sub appearances. What does Dunfermline Athletic mean to Gerry Britton?
So much, because so many things are tied in with my time there. Friendships that were made. Anna was a baby when I signed, and then the twins were born. So three of my kids sort of came to being really during my time at Dunfermline. So that was huge. But you mentioned it earlier, finishing 5th in the league for a team that had just been promoted. Nobody anticipated that. Getting to the semi-final of the cup, played Rangers at the time, who were like one of the best teams in Europe, never mind Scotland. So getting all those experiences in my career at a time when I was at my prime. I was 20, 24, 25. First season I was there, no injuries at all. Really, really fit, really on it. So from a personal point of view, football wise, it was great. But like we said earlier, just the whole atmosphere about the place at the time and the people, so many good people. When I went back last season to the game, I was amazed at the number of people 30 years later that are still there. Like Shirley and people in the back room, and I'm going, this is the way it should be. This is the way football should be at a club. You've got a lifelong relationship. So yeah, it means a great deal to me. It's always a result that I look for. I look for all my former teams, if I'm honest, for the games, but particularly given the brilliant memories that I've got for the Pars, it's always a team that I look for. Always will.
Superb, mate. Hopefully see you back at a game this season as well. You're always welcome.
I'll be back. Don't you worry about that.
Good man. Well, Gerry, thanks very much for your time. It's been class chatting again, and some great football stories there. So thanks again.
No, cheers, mate. No, thanks for the invite.
Thanks for listening to Walking Down the Holbeath Road. And a massive thank you to our latest guest, Gerry Britton, who joined us on this month's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to Walking Down the Holbeath Road on your favourite podcast platform. As always, this podcast was produced by Jan Motkiewicz and music supplied by Stuart Dusty Miller. Thanks once again for listening, and we look forward to walking down the Holbeath Road once again next month.